On a sunny day in Brighton, what seemed to be a perfect family outing turns into a nightmare. Two twin brothers mysteriously disappear from an amusement park, leaving behind unanswered questions and broken hearts. 8 months later, a yellow backpack and a blue cap appear in the middle of the forest, reigniting hope for their parents. What really happened to the children that day? The sun was gently warming Emma Smith's cheeks. Sitting on a bench at Brighton Pier Park, she could feel the sea breeze cooling her skin while her eyes never left her twins, David and Daniel. "Mom, look what I found!" shouted Daniel, running toward her with a small insect in his hands. Emma smiled. Daniel had always been this way, curious and adventurous, fascinated by every little discovery. "It's beautiful, honey, but set it free. You wouldn't want to separate it from its family, right?" she said softly. Daniel hesitated, then nodded and carefully returned the small insect to the grass. Very close by, under the shade of a tree, David was intently drawing, with his inseparable sketchbook of blank pages and colored pencils. "What are you drawing, Dave?" Emma asked, approaching him gently. David looked up. His face, so similar to Daniel's, had a more serious, always observant expression. "The carousel. It has pretty horses. But I also see something else there," he said without taking his eyes off the paper. Emma felt curious. She looked at the old carousel in the middle of the park. Wooden horses, bright colors, cheerful music. What was there that David saw but she didn't? "What do you see, honey?" David hesitated and then whispered, "There's a strange man. He's always there watching the children. I drew him here." He showed the drawing, next to the carousel. Emma felt a small chill. Who could that man be that David was talking about? She quickly glanced over at the carousel, but only saw families, laughing and enjoying the day. She tried to play it down. "Don't worry, honey, he's probably just waiting for his family." At that moment, the deep, calm voice of Michael interrupted her thoughts. "Who wants ice cream?" The children ran excitedly toward their father. Michael, a tall and reserved man, was carefully carrying the ice creams. "Chocolate for Daniel and vanilla for David, right?" The twins nodded happily and began to eat. Emma looked at Michael and smiled in complicity. "A perfect day, don't you think?" he whispered, wrapping his arm around her shoulder. "Yes, Michael. Perfect," she replied, though she couldn't help but throw one last uneasy glance at the carousel. But calm never lasts very long. Minutes later, while Michael was picking up used napkins, Emma looked toward the twins, now near the carousel. A large group of visitors passed in front of them, briefly blocking her view. When the crowd moved on, Emma felt her heart stop. "Where are the children, Michael? David and Daniel. I can't see them." "What do you mean you can't see them?" "They were just there," Michael responded, alarmed. Emma ran frantically to the carousel, calling them desperately. "David! Daniel! Answer, please!" Silence answered her cruelly. Parents and children around them began to notice her desperation, their looks turning concerned. A security guard, a robust man named Tom, quickly approached. "What's going on, ma'am?" "My sons. They were here just a second ago. They disappeared. Please help us." Emma's voice trembled. Her hands shook restlessly. Michael came over, clutching the small watch he always carried in his pocket, a gift from his children, trying to calm his own anxiety. They're 10-year-old twins, wearing identical blue caps. David had a yellow backpack, Michael described with a contained but clearly agitated voice. Tom immediately grabbed his radio. "Security, we have 2 missing. Children near the carousel. Close all park entrances and exits right now." Within minutes, the cheerful atmosphere transformed into controlled chaos. Guards checked every ride, parents called their children with worried voices, and police arrived with serious faces. Emma felt the world spinning around her. As minutes passed without news, the questions started tormenting Emma. What really happened? Why had David mentioned that strange man right before the incident? Afternoon gave way to evening. The police questioned witnesses, reviewed cameras, but no clues emerged. Emma and Michael remained together, hugging each other, devastated by uncertainty. "Why? Wasn't I more attentive?" Michael lamented in a low voice, looking at the watch he clutched tightly in his hand. "It's not your fault," Emma whispered, though she herself felt a piercing guilt. Night fell like a heavy blanket over the city. In the Smith home, a painful silence reigned. Emma walked into the twins' room. The unmade beds, the abandoned toys, David's drawings on the table. She felt the air leave her lungs. Michael appeared in the doorway, watching her with tired eyes. "The police said they're doing everything they can. We have to trust them," he tried to reassure her, although his words sounded empty. "I trust them, Michael, but I also trust our children. Something isn't right. I can feel it." Emma picked up one of David's drawings. It was the same one, of the carousel with the mysterious man off to the side. A disturbing idea began to grow in her mind. What if David had been trying to tell her something important, something she had ignored? The first night without David and Daniel passed slowly. Wrapped in anxiety, Emma stared at the dark ceiling, replaying over and over the twins' smile, their innocent laughter. She wondered where they might be, whether they were cold or afraid. At dawn, the doorbell pulled Emma and Michael out of a fitful sleep. It was the lead officer on the case, Inspector Brown, a serious man with an expressionless face. "I'm sorry to bother you so early, but I need to talk to you," he said quietly. Michael let the inspector into the living room. Emma couldn't wait any longer and asked in a trembling voice, "Did you find anything, Inspector?" Brown hesitated for a moment, carefully choosing his words. "We've thoroughly checked the park and all available cameras and questioned witnesses. Ms. Smith, Mr. Smith. So far, we haven't found any trace or evidence explaining what exactly happened to your children." Emma felt the room closing in on her. A deep anguish settled in her chest. "So, what are you saying exactly?" "My son simply vanished without leaving." "Any trace? We'll keep searching. We won't rest until we find an answer," the inspector replied calmly. "But I must be honest with you. Right now, it's as if the wind carried them away." Those words pierced Emma's heart like daggers. Michael took his wife's hand, trying to give her strength he himself didn't have. The inspector promised to keep them informed and left the house in silence. Emma stood there, feeling a mix of sadness and determination. She looked once again at David's drawing, feeling that small piece of paper held a secret. "They can't have disappeared without leaving traces," she thought. Something about all this was strange, beyond logic, and she was determined to find out what it was. Who was that man next to the carousel that David had drawn? Where were her children now? Deep inside, Emma knew her life would never be the same again, and that she was willing to go to any lengths to get her children back. The calendar in the kitchen marked exactly 8 months since that day in Brighton, Pier Park. 8 months since David and Daniel had vanished without a trace. On the table, Emma's cup of coffee sat cold, untouched for an hour. She stared at the wall, covered with maps, photos, and notes in small, nervous handwriting. "Emma, you should get some rest." The tired voice of Michael broke the silence. Emma didn't respond immediately. She kept examining a photo of the old carousel, surrounded by red-circled notes highlighting every suspicious detail she had identified over these months. "There's something there, Michael. Something we've overlooked," she finally replied, sounding distant. "I can't sleep knowing I'm not doing enough to find our children." Michael sighed deeply. His appearance had changed notably in these months. Deep circles under his eyes, a neglected beard, a distant and silent attitude. He had temporarily left his job as a naval engineer because he could no longer focus. He constantly carried the old watch that David and Daniel had given him, touching it like a ritual to keep their memory alive. "The police said they've done all they can," Michael said, almost whispering. "Maybe it's time to—" Emma cut him off sharply, her eyes full of despair and contained anger. "Time for what, Michael? To give up? To forget and move on as if nothing happened? They are our children. I can't believe you'd say something like that." Michael closed his eyes and remained silent. They had argued about this many times in these months, and the tension between them had become unbearable. Words had turned into knives, always ready to wound. "I never said that. Never." "But look at you." "Look at what you're doing to yourself, Emma. Look at us. There's nothing left of what we once were, Michael replied with a broken voice, glancing around the room that had become an improvised investigation office. She felt a pang of guilt, but pushed it aside, convincing herself that Michael didn't understand her pain or her urgent need to keep going. She looked again at the wall of photos, at the drawing David had left, the strange man beside the carousel. There's someone there who saw something. I'm sure of it. Michael lowered his head and slowly left the kitchen, saying nothing more. During these months, Emma had tried every possible avenue. She recalled how 5 months ago they had hired a private investigator recommended by a trusted friend, but the investigation only brought more frustration. No leads, no suspects, just vague theories and dead ends. Then there was the time they followed an anonymous tip that led them to London. A woman claimed to have seen 2 identical children in a market, but after days of reviewing cameras and interviewing witnesses, it turned out to be a devastating mistake. Each lead seemed to be a cruel mirage that only deepened her pain. Yet Emma never stopped believing her sons were alive somewhere. Something inside her shouted it every night as she tried to sleep. A few weeks ago, she decided to start her own investigation. Without telling Michael, she visited Brighton Pier Park multiple times, discreetly sitting for hours to observe. She carefully noted the schedules and behaviors of employees. Among them, the one who most stood out was the elderly Mr. Edward, the park caretaker. Edward had been working there for decades, always polite, always greeting with a timid smile and a slight tremor in his hands. But something about him deeply unsettled Emma. She remembered how David had drawn that strange man. Could it resemble Edward? She wasn't sure, but the feeling never left her. One day, Emma pretended to casually chat with Edward while buying a bottle of water near the carousel. "You've worked here for many years, right?" she asked in a friendly tone, trying to hide her suspicions. "Over 30, ma'am." "This park is my second home," Edward replied, but his hands began to tremble even more. Emma noticed the tremor, sharp and continuous, and wondered if it was nerves or something deeper. "Were you here the day my children disappeared?" she asked abruptly, trying to maintain a casual expression. Edward lowered his gaze, his smile disappearing abruptly. Yes, of course I was. It was a terrible day," he said, his voice weak and halting. "Did you see anything?" "Anything unusual?" Emma pressed him gently. Edward hesitated for a moment before answering. "There were so many people, so much confusion. I wish I had seen something helpful, but no." Emma felt that Edward wasn't telling the whole truth. Why was he hesitating so much? What was he hiding? That night, Emma went home even more disturbed. She found Michael sitting on the couch, once again holding the children's watch in his hands. "Where were you?" he asked, not looking up. "At the park. I needed to check something." Michael looked at her sadly. "Again, Emma? How long will this go on? We can't keep living like this." Emma snapped at that moment. "And what do you want me to do? Sit here, waiting while our children are out there? Is that what you would do?" "They're my children too," Michael replied, raising his voice for the first time. "I'm in pain too." "But you're losing yourself, Emma, and you're losing us. We lost ourselves when we stopped searching together," she said finally, breaking down. They both fell silent, separated by an emotional chasm too big to cross. Finally, Michael left the room, defeated. Emma returned to her wall of investigation. She went over every detail again. The park's schedules, visitor testimonies, the full list of employees. She paused again at the name Andrew Parker, an employee who had been recently fired for misconduct. A shadow of doubt crossed her face. What was behind that sudden dismissal? While considering calling the park to find out more about Andrew, her phone vibrated in her pocket. She answered it anxiously, hoping for some news. It was an unknown number. "Hello?" she answered nervously. "Mrs. Smith, this is Detective Brown. We need you and your husband to come to the station immediately. We have something important related to your children's case. Something found near the South Downs." Emma felt her heart pounding violently in her chest. Could this be the lead she had waited for so long? "We'll be right there," she replied, trying to stay calm. She hung up and ran to find Michael. He looked at her, alarmed by her urgent expression. "What happened, Emma?" "The police. They found something near the South Downs. They need us right now." Michael stood up quickly, recovering an energy he seemed to have lost months ago. They drove, in silence, their thoughts racing. What had been found in that remote place? Could it finally be a real sign of David and Daniel? As the car raced toward the police station, Emma felt more certain than ever that her search had not been in vain. Yet one question tormented her constantly. What did the appearance of the yellow backpack and the blue cap that the detective mentioned really mean? Could their children be close by? The uncomfortable silence at the police station was broken only by the soft sound of a wall fan. Emma and Michael waited seated in front of Inspector Brown's worn desk, not exchanging a word. Their tired, anxious eyes stayed fixed on the closed door before them. Finally, the inspector entered the office, carefully carrying a transparent evidence bag. Emma felt her pulse quicken. Michael unconsciously squeezed the small watch belonging to their sons in his hand. "We found this in the wooded area of the South Downs," Brown said, placing the bag gently on the table. Inside it, clearly visible, were David's yellow backpack, clothes they immediately recognized, and one of the boys' blue caps, partially covered by dust and dried leaves. Emma brought her hands to her mouth, trying to hold back a cry. Michael remained motionless, unable to look away from those items that meant so much to them. "And them?" Michael asked, his voice trembling. "Did you find anything else?" Brown slowly shook his head. "I'm sorry, but for now that's all. We've combed the area several times, but found no other traces." Emma looked fixedly at the backpack, trying to control her emotions. Can I look at it myself?" she finally asked. Brown nodded and handed her some gloves, carefully opening the bag. Emma slowly took out the backpack, and her heart contracted at the memory of David carrying it proudly, filled with pencils and notebooks. Upon opening it, she found folded, damp clothes. As she carefully removed each item, something slipped onto the desk. It was a folded sheet of white paper, slightly crumpled. Emma unfolded it slowly, feeling her breath catch. It was another drawing by David, the same carousel in the park, but this time more detailed. Next to it, there was a clearly drawn dark figure with features hard to distinguish but disturbingly familiar. "Oh my God," Emma whispered. "David was trying to tell us something. Look at this drawing, Inspector. Do you recognize who it might be?" Brown silently studied the drawing, pensive. "It could be anyone. It's very generic. But you mentioned earlier that David drew something similar the day they disappeared, correct?" "Exactly," Emma said with urgency. "David saw something that we ignored. Someone was watching them. He tried to warn us." Michael put his hand to his face, eyes brimming with repressed tears. "I should have paid more attention," he muttered, voice breaking. "I should never have taken my eyes off them, not even for a second." Emma looked at Michael, deeply understanding his pain. She touched his arm gently, trying to comfort him. "It wasn't your fault, Michael. We couldn't have known." The inspector intervened delicately. "We're following all leads, and these items may be crucial to the investigation. However, honestly, we still don't know how they got there or who might have left them." Emma took a deep breath and spoke with determination. "I want to go there. I need to see it with my own eyes. Maybe we'll find something you missed." Brown hesitated for an instant, but understood the mother's need. "All right, I'll accompany you personally." 2 hours later, Emma and Michael walked with the inspector and a small police team to the exact spot in the South Downs. The landscape was beautiful, but the unsettling feeling of the forest bore into every step they took. The place was remote, isolated, almost inaccessible from the main road. Upon arriving, Emma felt a shiver run down her spine. She looked around, wondering how her children's belongings could have ended up in such a lonely place. Michael walked close by, silent and pale, examining every detail as if searching for an explanation in the ground itself. "This is precisely where we found the backpack and the cap," said Brown, pointing to some low shrubs. We've already searched this area multiple times, but look around as much as you like. Emma crouched beside the indicated spot. Her gaze frantically scanned every inch of the ground. Disturbed soil, dried leaves, stones. Could David or Daniel have left some clue here? I don't see anything useful, Michael said after several minutes, clearly frustrated. What if someone placed this here just to mislead us? Emma slowly shook her head. Something inside her insisted that wasn't the case. David would never leave his things, especially his drawings, without a specific reason. Let's keep looking, Emma said, refusing to give up. There has to be something else. For over an hour, they meticulously combed the surrounding area. But the result was always the same: frustration and more questions. Finally, exhausted and without answers, they headed back toward the road. Emma felt increasing pressure in her chest, though she tried not to show her desperation. Suddenly, a voice broke the heavy silence around them. Excuse me, are you looking for something? Emma turned quickly. A humble-looking man, wearing a worn jacket and boots covered in mud, was watching them from a small fence that enclosed a nearby property. We're looking for our children, Emma answered immediately. Have you seen anything strange around here lately? The man hesitated, nervously looking both ways. He slowly approached them, speaking in a lower voice. A couple of days ago, I saw something that might be important. He finally confessed. Inspector. Brown immediately intervened, showing his badge. I'm Inspector Brown. Please tell us exactly what you saw. The man took a deep breath before continuing. I saw someone walking around here near where you all just were. It caught my attention because he was wearing a uniform from Brighton Pier Park. It seemed odd to see him out here so far from the park. Emma felt a jolt in her chest. She immediately looked at Michael, whose eyes reflected the same mix of fear and hope. Are you sure about that? Brown asked seriously. Absolutely, the man replied. The uniform was clear. It had the park's logo on the back. I saw it clearly because he passed right by here looking hurried and nervous. Can you describe him? Emma asked urgently. The man furrowed his brow, trying to recall. I didn't see him very well. He was wearing a cap or something that covered his face, but he was tall, thin, walking fast. He seemed like he was hiding something. The inspector exchanged a meaningful look with Emma and Michael. This could be important, said Brown, taking careful notes. Anything else you remember, sir? That's all, the man replied, somewhat uncomfortably. But be careful. It's not normal for someone from the park to come this far out here like that. Emma felt a desperate impulse. She had to find out, immediately, who that man in the park uniform was. Could it be Andrew Parker, the employee who had been recently fired? Or maybe Edward, who always seemed to be hiding something? Thank you, sir, Emma said gratefully. This will help us a lot. The man nodded slowly and returned to his property without another word. In the back of the police car, Emma felt a new determination take over. There was a connection between David's drawing and the appearance of this mysterious figure. Another piece of the puzzle had just surfaced. She looked again at Michael, who remained silent, deep in thought. Michael, we have a real lead now. Someone from the park is involved. I'm sure of it. Michael nodded slowly. His gaze still carried sadness, but now also a faint spark of hope. As they returned to the city, Emma felt that for the first time in 8 months, they were closer to the truth. There was a hidden figure lurking in the park, someone who knew exactly what had happened that day. But the most important question still tormented her. Who really was that man in the uniform, and what had he done with David and Daniel? Emma had never been one to passively wait for solutions. From childhood, her nature pushed her to seek answers. Now more than ever, that determination guided every step of her life. That morning, after leaving Michael asleep on the couch, she decided to resume her personal investigation. Dawn was just breaking when she arrived again at Brighton Pier Park. The sound of the waves blended with distant laughter that now felt foreign to her. Discreetly, she watched each employee, trying to spot any suspicious or unusual behavior. A cotton candy vendor named Lisa, a young woman with a friendly smile, agreed to speak with her briefly. Do you remember seeing anything strange that day? Lisa, something out of place, Emma asked, watching her closely. The young woman shook her head gently, looking around uneasily. I didn't see much. There were too many people, but... Lisa hesitated. There was someone who argued a lot with other employees, Andrew Parker. He was always getting angry. They fired him shortly after your children disappeared. Emma made a mental note of Andrew Parker's name. It wasn't the first time she'd heard it. She decided to head straight to the park offices to find out more about him. Upon entering the office, Emma felt a knot in her stomach when she saw Mr. Edward calmly seated behind an old desk. The man looked up, surprised to see her, and his hands began trembling noticeably. "Good morning, Edward," Emma greeted, trying to hide her nervousness. "May I speak with you?" The elderly employee hesitated but slowly nodded, indicating a chair in front of him. "How can I help you, Mrs. Smith?" he asked in a weak voice. "I need to ask you some questions about Andrew Parker. I've been told he worked here." Edward took a deep breath. His eyes showed fear, and his hand shook even more at the mention of that name. "Yes, Andrew. He worked here for several years. He was a complicated young man, very reserved, with a difficult temper. We never knew much about him," Edward replied. Emma noticed how his hands trembled, restless on the surface of the desk. Why exactly was he fired? She asked carefully, watching each reaction. Edward lowered his gaze, uneasy. Andrew had several fights with employees and visitors. He had behavioral issues, especially around young people, children. He was caught multiple times yelling and losing control. Finally, the park had to let him go. Was he here the day my children disappeared? Edward swallowed hard, looking toward the door with obvious discomfort. Yes, he was. And it was right after that when he got fired. There was a serious altercation with another employee. Andrew was furious and threatened revenge. Then he disappeared, and we never heard from him again. Emma felt her heartbeat racing. That information seemed crucial. "Edward, I need you to tell me the truth. Could Andrew have done something bad to my children?" The old man trembled even more, his eyes filling with tears. I don't know, Mrs. Smith, but I never trusted him." There was something dark in his gaze, something frightening. Emma left the office filled with anger and fear, knowing she had to find out more about Andrew Parker. That afternoon, she returned home and began frantically investigating Andrew Parker. She combed through old news stories, searched his name online, and gradually uncovered a disturbing picture. Andrew had a hard childhood. He was an orphan from an early age, went through several foster homes, and had continuous run-ins with the law since adolescence. He had been arrested multiple times for minor offenses: theft, street fights, violent threats. All these details formed a troubling profile that matched her suspicions. Michael entered the room as Emma was reading a report about Andrew on her computer screen. "You're at this again, Emma?" he said, visibly tired. "The police are already investigating Andrew. Let them do their job." Emma turned, desperation in her eyes. "I can't just wait, Michael." "Every second counts." That man was there that day. Edward knew, and he said nothing. All of this could have been avoided if someone had acted earlier. Michael looked at her with profound sadness, obviously exhausted. "Don't you see what this is doing to you? Look at yourself, Emma. You're obsessed. And you aren't," she replied, raising her voice. "Don't you feel the same need I do to know what happened? Don't you want to find them?" "Of course I do, Emma," Michael responded almost in a whisper. "But I'm tired of fighting ghosts, of chasing leads that go nowhere. I'm tired of losing you too." Emma was silent for a moment, the anger dissolving into sadness. Michael left the room, closing the door behind him. As dusk settled, Emma received an unexpected call. It was the assistant detective informing her that Andrew Parker had recently been seen near Brighton, though they did not yet have an exact location. "We're doing everything possible to find him, Mrs. Smith," said the detective's voice. "But please be careful and leave this to us." Emma hung up, feeling a mixture of hope and frustration. She knew she had to act quickly, but had no idea how to proceed. Just then, her phone vibrated again. This time, it was an anonymous message that made her heart race. If you want to know what really happened, go to the old abandoned house in the woods, near where the backpack was found. There you'll find the answers you seek. Emma felt short of breath. Who had sent that message? Could it be Andrew Parker, trying to toy with her, or someone else trying to help her in secret? She looked toward the closed door, aware that Michael would never approve of this. But the desperation to find answers was too strong. She decided to go immediately. If there was any chance, however small, she had to take it. Before leaving, she left a brief note on the table. Michael, I'm sorry, I have to do this. I'll be back soon. Emma. She grabbed her car keys and left the house in a hurry, fully aware of the danger she was facing, but feeling a deep urgency she couldn't ignore. As she drove toward the South Downs, 1,000 questions flooded her mind. Who was contacting her? What would she find in that abandoned house? Was it a trap, or was she truly close to uncovering the truth? Emma was prepared to face any risk if it meant bringing David and Daniel home. Deep down, one more troubling question echoed constantly. Would she really be ready to face the truth she had been so tirelessly seeking? The road to the old abandoned house in the South Downs was covered by dense vegetation that seemed to want to hide it from the world. Emma drove slowly, with Michael in the passenger seat, wrapped in an uneasy silence. Since receiving the anonymous message, the tightness in her chest had only grown, but she couldn't turn back now. When they arrived, she turned off the engine and they both sat quietly, staring at the structure in front of them. It was an old wooden house, worn down by years. The cracked walls were covered in ivy, the windows were broken, and the main door hung on its hinges, like a crooked mouth inviting them in. I don't like this, Emma, Michael said, finally breaking the silence, looking at the house with deep mistrust. We should call the police before going in. Emma shook her head firmly. If there's something in there that can lead us to our children, we have to see it first. Then we'll call the police. Michael sighed in frustration, but knew nothing would stop Emma at this point. They walked slowly toward the entrance, feeling dry branches crack under their feet. As they crossed the threshold, a damp chill hit them right away. Emma turned on her phone's flashlight, faintly illuminating the dark interior. The living room was empty, covered in dust and debris. A pungent smell of mold filled the air. Emma felt a shiver as they moved cautiously through the corridors, examining every room with growing anxiety. Emma, look at this, Michael whispered, pointing to a wall at the back of what seemed to be a living area. Emma approached, her heart pounding faster with each step. Tacked clumsily to the wall with pins were photographs of David and Daniel. Some were images taken from afar at the park. Others seemed more recent, showing the children sitting in some dark place, looking scared. Emma felt her breath leave her lungs. Oh my God, Michael. Our children were here. The kidnapper kept them in this place. Michael stared at the photos, in disbelief, his hands trembling with impotence and rage. Emma continued exploring the room, checking every detail with desperation. On an old table, she found small personal items, a blue pencil bitten at the tip, which she recognized as David's, and a tiny plastic insect that Daniel always kept in his pocket. Tears started streaming silently down Emma's face as she gently picked up these objects. We have to call the police right now, Michael said, urgently pulling out his phone. We can't stay here. It's too dangerous. Emma shook her head, still searching every corner frantically. We can't leave yet. There must be more. We have to figure out where they are now. Michael grabbed her arm firmly, trying to bring her to her senses. Emma, enough. This is too much. We have enough to give the authorities. We can't risk it anymore. Let's think clearly for once. Emma looked him straight in the eyes, filled with both pain and determination. Michael, if we leave now, we could miss our only chance to get them back. I can't live with that. You wouldn't understand. Michael let go of her arm, feeling deeply hurt by those words. Do you really think I don't understand? Do you think I don't feel the same pain you do? He asked, voice breaking. There are children, Emma. I'm just trying to keep us safe. Emma closed her eyes, realizing how much her words had stung. But before she could respond, they both heard a noise outside, clearly audible through the thin walls. They froze, looking at the partially open door, slow footsteps on dry leaves. Someone was approaching the house. "What do we do?" Michael asked in a frantic whisper. Emma urgently gestured toward the back door, barely visible in the darkness. "Let's go out the back, quick." They slipped quietly out the rear door, crouching, trying not to make a sound. They ran, hunched, over, toward a cluster of nearby bushes, hiding there while watching a dark figure enter the house. From their hiding place, they watched in terror as the person moved inside, shining a flashlight in every room. Emma was trembling, her heart pounding violently in her chest. After several minutes of unbearable tension, the figure emerged from the house. It was a tall man, wearing a dark coat and a hood over his head, completely hiding his face. Without stopping, he disappeared among the trees. When they were sure he had left, Emma and Michael ran back to the car, breathing heavily and feeling deep anguish. "This got way out of hand," Michael whispered, trying to catch his breath. "We got too close." Emma, unable to speak, checked her phone to call the police. But before she could, it vibrated again. Another anonymous message, short but forceful. "They're not far. Keep searching." Emma's heart pounded at her ribs. Who? Was this person guiding them from the shadows? Could she really trust someone who refused to identify themselves? She looked at Michael, who saw the shaken look on her face. "What is it?" Michael asked worriedly. "I just got another message. It says our children are close, that we have to keep looking." Michael took a deep breath, both exasperated and full of hope. Who is this person? Why won't they help us openly instead of playing these games? Emma shook her head, feeling powerless. "I don't know, but this is all we have. We can't stop now." Michael nodded slowly, finally understanding Emma's absolute resolve. They drove home in utter silence. Emma couldn't stop thinking about the photos and belongings she'd found. The image of her children terrified in that house filled her with profound anguish, but also strengthened her resolve to find them as soon as possible. Yet another question haunted her. Who had been in the house just minutes earlier? Was it Andrew Parker himself, or someone else involved in David and Daniel's disappearance? One thing was certain in her mind. They were getting closer to the truth. But to reach it, they would have to face even greater risks. Night fell slowly over the forest, cloaking everything in thick, echoing shadows. Emma knew she couldn't rest until she had answers. Her children needed her now more than ever, and though part of her was deeply afraid of what she might discover, she was prepared to face any danger, because after all, she was a mother looking for her children, and nothing and no one could stop her from bringing them home. The next morning dawned blanketed by a thick fog that draped Brighton in a gray cloak. Emma, who had barely slept, felt every fiber of her body exhausted. However, the determination burning in her chest was stronger than any fatigue. Resolute, she drove alone to Brighton Pier Park. She hadn't told Michael of her plan. She wanted a direct confrontation with the only man who seemed to be hiding a fundamental truth. Edward. Upon arriving, she found him in the guard's booth, absently gazing at the stormy sea. When he noticed her presence, Edward stood up, visibly nervous. "Good morning, Mrs. Smith. How can I help you?" "I need answers, Edward," Emma said firmly, "and I need them now. Don't lie to me, because I know you know more than you're saying." Edward swallowed hard, turning his gaze toward the floor. I don't know what you're talking about." Emma moved closer, confronting him face to face. "My children have been missing for months. You know Andrew Parker had something to do with it. I've seen your reaction every time I mention his name. Tell me right now what you're hiding." Edward trembled noticeably, tears starting to well in his eyes. "He threatened me. Andrew is dangerous. He said if I told anyone what I knew, I'd regret it for the rest of my life." Emma took a deep breath, keeping her composure. "Listen to me, Edward. If you don't talk now, my children may never come home. I need you to be brave and tell me the truth. I beg you." The old man took a deep breath and finally broke into tears. Andrew had problems for years. His behavior was unstable, violent. He had a strange obsession with the park and certain children. After your children disappeared, he came here furious. He demanded I keep quiet if I knew what was good for me. Emma felt deep anger rising inside her. Why didn't you ever tell this to the police? I was afraid, Mrs. Smith. I'm old and weak. He's capable of anything. Edward replied, anguished. Is there anything else you haven't told them? Edward paused briefly before continuing. Andrew used to talk about a special place of his. Said there were things nobody would ever find. Something hidden where no one would ever look. Emma's pulse quickened in her chest. Where exactly, Edward? He never said it clearly, but he kept repeating, beneath the abandoned house. I never really understood what he meant, but it sounded terrifying. Emma immediately grasped the significance of his words. Without wasting another second, she grabbed her phone and called Inspector Brown to share this crucial information. Within hours, the police had a full team at the park. Edward sat in a small interrogation room. This time, he decided to fully cooperate. In front of Inspector Brown and two detectives, he revealed everything he knew about Andrew Parker, his suspicious behavior, and the threats he'd received. Parker was always strange. He treated other employees badly, had constant issues with children. When the Smith twins disappeared, he was very agitated, saying incoherent things, repeatedly mentioning that house in the South Downs. Do you think he could have hurt those kids? Brown asked firmly. Edward took a deep breath before answering. Honestly, I think Andrew is capable of anything. The following day, the police moved fast, acting on Edward's information. A special unit of officers raided Andrew Parker's apartment, located in a distant part of Brighton. After breaking down the door, they found the place messy and dark, with an oppressive atmosphere that matched Andrew's disturbed mind. Brown, accompanied by detectives, carefully searched every corner. In a dark room, hidden in a closet, they found something that made everyone shudder. Close-up photographs of David and Daniel, detailed maps of the park and the surrounding woods, and strange notes repeatedly referencing the old abandoned house. They also found a notebook on a small table, filled with unsettling drawings clearly laying out meticulous plans, with routes, hidden places, and eerie phrases. Soon they will be with me forever. Brown felt a chill run through his body, fully grasping the severity of the situation at last. We have to find Andrew Parker right now, he ordered his team. That night, while Emma anxiously read the latest reports, she heard the front door open slowly. Michael entered in silence, looking at her with a sad yet tender expression. Emma, he began gently. I'm so sorry. I know I've been unfair to you. I know how hard you fought. Emma stood up slowly, tears filling her eyes, and moved toward him for a hug. I'm sorry too, Michael. I've been so desperate I forgot you were suffering too. I don't want to lose you as well. Michael hugged her tightly, finally recognizing they needed each other more than ever. We're going to find them, Emma. We're going to get our children back, he whispered with renewed determination. A few hours later, as they tried to get some rest, an urgent call from Inspector Brown abruptly shattered the brief calm they had just recovered. Mrs. Smith, Mr. Smith, we have solid evidence. We searched Andrew Parker's apartment and found clear incriminating proof. We're close to catching him. You need to stay alert and stay safe. Emma felt a mix of relief and anxiety grip her. Inspector, Edward mentioned something else. Andrew said he'd hidden something beneath the abandoned house. I think we need to go there as soon as possible. Brown was silent for a few seconds, weighing the information carefully. We're putting a team together. Stay safe until then. Once she hung up, Emma grabbed Michael's hands firmly. We have to go back there right now. If we wait, we could lose our chance to find David and Daniel. Michael nodded soberly, understanding the urgency. Before leaving, Emma paused and called Edward one last time. She needed confirmation. Are you sure, Edward? Andrew specifically said, beneath the abandoned house. Edward answered immediately, in a voice that was clear and resolute for the first time. "Yes, Mrs. Smith, I'm completely sure that's exactly what he said." I never forgot those words. Emma thanked him and hung up, feeling certainty deep inside like never before. In the cold of that night, under a dark, silent sky, Emma and Michael got into the car. They knew they were close to the truth, but also understood the danger before them. As the vehicle sped toward the South Downs, the most painful question echoed constantly in their minds. What exactly had Andrew hidden beneath that old house? And, most importantly, were David and Daniel still safe? Early morning settled over the South Downs, cloaking the forest in a heavy silence broken only by the determined steps of the police team. Emma and Michael, accompanied by Inspector Brown and several officers, approached the old abandoned house once again, shining their flashlights in the darkness. Emma felt her heart pounding. Each step was a mix of terror and hope. The door, still open from her previous visit, invited them once more into that dark, gloomy place. Crossing the threshold, the familiar damp chill struck them again. Brown signaled his team while Emma stepped forward with Michael at her side, both hands clenched together. "Are you ready?" Michael asked quietly, anxiety clear in his voice. Emma nodded, trying to control her breathing. The police began a meticulous inspection of the floor, lifting rugs and moving old furniture with caution. Emma watched every movement closely, feeling like time was stretching out unbearably. Suddenly, one of the officers called out to Inspector Brown, "Over here! I've found something." In a corner of the living room, beneath a dusty old rug, they revealed a wooden trapdoor. Emma felt her heart skip a beat. Michael held her arm firmly, keeping her steady in that crucial moment. Brown gave the order and they carefully lifted the hatch. A narrow staircase descended into a dark cellar. "David? Daniel?" Emma called in a trembling voice down into the darkness, tears in her eyes. "It's Mom and Dad. We're here." Silence hung cruelly for a few seconds until a faint whisper answered from the shadows. "Mom? Dad?" Emma released Michael's hand and hurried down the stairs, ignoring any police warnings. Her flashlight lit up a small cellar, damp and cold. There, in a corner, pale and frightened but alive, were David and Daniel. Emma ran to them, tears flowing freely down her face. "My babies, my babies," she cried, hugging them fiercely. "We found you. You're safe. You're here." Michael followed behind her, joining the embrace, unable to hold back his own tears. David and Daniel began to sob silently, finally finding refuge in their parents' protective arms. The police looked on, moved by the scene, sharing the relief and joy of that moment. For several minutes, no words were spoken, only embraces, tears, and whispers of relief. At last, Inspector Brown gently broke the silence. "We need to get out of here. Let's take them somewhere safe." Emma and Michael nodded, never letting go of their son's hands for an instant. Outside the house, wrapped in blankets offered by the officers, David spoke weakly, his voice worn but full of courage. "Mom, I tried to warn you with my drawings. I knew you would come." Emma caressed his face tenderly. "You did, my love. Your drawings led us here." At that moment, from the nearby woods, came the firm voice of an officer. "He's here. We've got Andrew Parker." Emma and Michael stood up quickly. They watched as the police escorted a thin man with a grim face and a defeated expression. "Andrew," Emma said, facing him with a steady voice. "Why did you do this?" Andrew Parker looked up, full of fear and rage. "You don't understand anything. You don't know what it's like to feel worthless, ignored by the world," he responded bitterly. "I didn't want to hurt them. I just wanted to have something of my own, something no one could take from me." Brown intervened firmly. "That doesn't justify kidnapping two innocent children. You'll face justice for this." Andrew lowered his head, defeated as he was led to the police car. Emma felt a mix of compassion and revulsion, but chose to focus on her sons, who needed all her attention and love now. Days later, Brighton woke. to the comforting news that the Smith twins had been rescued. In a public statement, Inspector Brown specifically thanked Mr. Edward, who was publicly recognized for his courage in ultimately helping with the investigation. "I never wanted to remain silent," Edward said emotionally at a press conference. "I was just afraid, but now I realize I should have acted sooner. Please forgive my cowardice." Emma embraced Edward, silently expressing her gratitude. The city, moved, celebrated David and Daniel's return as a triumph of hope over adversity. Back in the quiet of home, Emma and Michael finally sat down to hear in detail all that had happened during those 8 months of captivity. David spoke first, showing a maturity beyond his years. "Andrew took us that day at the park. He said you wouldn't come for us, but I always knew it was a lie, so I drew everything I could, hoping you would find us." Daniel, timidly holding his mother's hand, added, "David protected me all the time, Mom. He told me we'd see you and Dad again." Emma and Michael hugged them once more, proud and deeply moved by their children's bravery. They spent many long hours sharing their emotions, tears, questions, and answers, gradually coming to understand the immense courage David and Daniel had shown in enduring those difficult months. In the weeks that followed, the Smith house slowly returned to some sense of normalcy. Laughter and play once again echoed in rooms that had been silent for months. Michael gradually resumed work, but dedicated much more time to his family. Emma returned to teaching literature, although she would never forget what had happened. One calm evening, while David and Daniel slept soundly in their rooms, Emma and Michael reflected together in the living room. "We'll never forget what happened," Michael said softly. "But I believe we're stronger now." Emma nodded, her gaze filled with serenity and love. "We learned about hope, about forgiveness, but above all, we learned that our family is the most important thing we have. We will never forget that again." They held hands, looking at the family photos on the wall, filled with profound gratitude and regained happiness. Emma felt intense emotion. The worst was over, and now she knew life had a renewed meaning. Love, unity, and courage had prevailed over fear and despair. As she closed her eyes, Emma knew the future would be different, marked by memory, yes, but above all by the certainty that, together, they could overcome any obstacle. The story of the Smith family was now filled with bravery, hope, and the powerful bond that unites parents and children. And that was a story worth telling and remembering forever.